think he's not the man. He's not the man, but for sure is the signal of this change, of this willingness of change. Everybody wants to change. Actually, they want to change the way to make politics. Have you heard about this other new party called the Lombard League?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And they lost a lot of votes because of the coming into politics of Berlusconi, because they were too radical by certain means. For example, they wanted to transform Italy in a federal nation. So a lot of people were afraid. But anyway, 3 years ago they really got a lot of votes, and they are not politicians at all. They are normal people who came into politics. And, I think that there is some analogy with the Weimar Republic. I think so.
Wait and see. Wait and see. The thing is, Italy is prosperous, isn't it? It's a very prosperous country. Prosperity is, you know, it's a stabilizing influence. And it's not like the Soviet Union, where you have a very low standard of living and people, well, the former Soviet Union, Russia today, say, where we have a chaos economically and in every other sense. That's dangerous. Because when people are hungry, literally hungry, they will do anything, join any party. But I think Italy is so prosperous that I can't see, maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I mean, I can't, I mean, the fear of it is some sort of totalitarian regime seizing the mass media, and, you know, in Italy, let's say, and turning Italy into a new kind of fascist state. That's not likely to happen, is it? I don't think it could happen. You think it could happen?
No.
No, I don't think
No, I don't believe it.
The worst thing that will happen is they will turn Italy into a huge game show. That it would trivialize the country. That's the danger. But
I think so. There has been a fiscal crisis going on. That's probably the reason why the people voted for Berlusconi, because I think you want to renew the dream of a prosperous economy. For example, developing the stock exchange or the financial business or the investment on the new kind of production. We call them not material, when you produce information and things like that. And this, it was not so sure if really produced during the 80s, during the government by the Socialist Party, and especially by Craxi, that now is having a lot of court cases for the corruptions. And but actually, during the 80s in Italy, you stayed well. There were a lot of money coming from the financial environment, but you have money. There was not so much poverty. And a couple of years ago, when these magistrates began to accuse these corrupted politicians, also the economical crisis went up, and so the people were really afraid, I think, and they wanted to renew this dream of staying well, and to have money, to spend money, to have good holidays, and to have the possibility to buy goods. Everyone in Italy have a couple of TV sets at home, a video recorder.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, on my visits to Italy, I'm always struck by how comfortable and how prosperous people are. Not just the well-to-do people, but everybody. You know, most people seem to be comfortably are,
Yeah.
which is good. Whereas when I first started going to Italy in the late 1940s, even into the 50s and 60s, I would say that there were a lot of rich people in Italy. It was quite obvious if you went to Milan or Turin or Rome. There were a lot of rich people and well-to-do people, but there were also a lot of poor people there. Not so much now, less than in this country. Here there are a lot of poor people, really poor people, large segments of the British population. I mean, I'm sure you'll agree, particularly when you get away from London. But even in London, if you go to the Midlands or the north of England, you see dereliction, extreme poverty, and a real social divide between those who have no hope, no future, and the rest of the population. That's very dangerous. That's another story.
We wanted to ask about the role of the writer in that half of the 20th century, or the end of the 20th century. What happens for a writer within the information economy? In an economy that's highly dependent on passive information, what the position the writer has, in the sense that...
You mean the novelist?
Yeah, the novelist or intellectual philosopher, whatever. Whose whole life depends on a creative use of information, repositioning information, producing new associations of words, at a time when the audience for the novel is disappearing or changing. How does that tie in with the growth of this new economy?
Well, as I was saying earlier, I'm not really a part of the sort of PC computer generation. So you know much more about that than I do. But over the long term, I mean, I'm old enough to see, now I'm 63, so I've been thinking about writing or thinking about being a writer for nearly 50 years. Now, I started out in my first writings were done when I was at school in the 1940s, and this really was the heyday of the 20th century writer. Writers still enjoyed huge sales, and they still were sort of, I would say, the consciences of the educated population of the West, but they had great moral authority, large audiences, both serious, semi-serious, and popular. That's all changed, of course. I mean, I've watched the steady decline of the role of the writer, certainly the novelist, who's now a marginal figure. And I would say the novel is going the way of poetry. I mean, people still write poetry, and a few people still read it. It has ups and downs of popularity, but it's a minority. It's a minority pastime which has no influence whatsoever on society at large. Whereas many writers this century, many novelists this century, have had a great deal of influence. I mean, in this country, George Bernard Shaw and H.G. Wells had enormous social influence on the country. During the war, a popular writer whom you would have heard of, called JG Ballard, again had enormous influence on the wartime morale and the like. Now we see the novelist increasingly marginalized. The sad thing is, I think the novel is becoming a sort of regional form. Very fewer and fewer novels are translated. I mean, I regret to say how many Italian novels are translated into English. Not enough. How many French novels? How many German novels are translated into English? Very few. And it may be that far from bringing about the novelist's death, the computer age, the PC age, the electronic information age may bring